Afternoon Express, where we are still focusing on all things summer dining and summer entertaining. Helping us do so is our musical guest for today. Listen, this Thursday we started it off with a rock and roll beat, and this is brought to you none other than Mr. Francois van Kirk. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Now, Tumi, did you check him out in the previous recipe?
I did, and ek is 'n kandidaat as om by mense lekker kos te gee. So that's what I am.
I like that.
That went straight over my head. I have got no clue what Tumi was talking about for a minute. Yeah, oui, bonjour, yes, I don't know. But listen, one thing that is a universal language is food, and that is what we're dishing up today. Juicy, sweet, and sticky are some of the words that I use to describe a good rack of ribs. Using Excella mayonnaise, we show you how to make these utterly delicious, sweet and sticky ribs that will have your guests and you licking your fingers.
Yes, that is the aim.
Sounds good.
And Francois, I don't know if you're much of a rib guy. I don't know if you love ribs.
I do. I love ribs, yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
All right, then. I think the one thing that's important when it comes to making ribs is building flavor, because the one thing that people get wrong is either they boil it and then they just put a basting, and you can literally taste the blandness of the meat and just the basting of the sauce. So the first step that we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to spice or flavor our ribs before we put any basting. And that starts with our spice mix that you've got over there. I'm going to ask you just to mix everything together.
I think I can do that.
But before we go too far, I will then ask you, once you've made the spice mix, just to give me about half of it so that I can do the marinade. So this is what I was talking about, Bali, with the layers of flavor. We're starting with the spice mix where Francois mixed up there. We've got some paprika, we've got some cumin, we've also got some garlic powder.
Are we going to put some salt and pepper in there?
Yeah, you can. You can definitely do that. So it is important to layer those flavors. So we're starting with the spice mix. Once that's done, we then do another sauce and the basting. So maybe I can get into that while Francois...
Yeah, let's get into it. I think for me, what's key is a good basting sauce, because a lot of the time when I go out, especially because I never make my ribs at home, I always just ask for the plain basting, none of these funny flavors. Correct. I mean, Francois, I know you love a good braai.
Yeah, I do.
What do you love to hook up?
I think my favourite thing is a fillet.
Ooh.
But I'll braai anything. I braai ribs too, but I have to say I buy it
Flavored.
packaged and with a pre-sauce and
Okay, well, actually,
so maybe if I learn something today, I'll apply it at home, right?
Definitely. That's the whole idea.
I was literally about to say, you know what, I should not be judging anyone because I do the exact same thing. But that's why we have a masterclass, so you can learn how to whip it up at home.
Correct.
How do you cook this thing? Do you...
Okay, so let me show you. First step is I'm taking that spice mix that you just made and I'm taking about a tablespoon and adding that into my sauce.
Okay.
So you now can go ahead, even if you want to use your hands, and just place as much of that spice rub on both sides of your ribs.
Okay.
We're choosing to go with pork ribs today because I feel like they get more nice and tender than the other ribs. I'm not saying don't use lamb or don't use beef. I personally prefer the pork ribs. But then for that sauce, moving along to the sauce, as you can see, I've added a couple of different flavors here. We've got our brown sugar for the sweetness as well as for the caramelization. We've got our tomato paste and our mustard in here as well. What they do is not only do they give us that sweet and sour flavor, but they also help in tenderizing our ribs as well. And our Excella mayonnaise works perfectly to also help with the tenderization because that zinginess of the flavors. I'm not sure if you've heard or noticed whenever people make ribs, there's always a balance of sweet and sour. That's because the sour flavors actually help with tenderizing your meat as well.
Cool.
So that's why I've added some tomato paste, I've added some mustard, and I've added our Excella mayonnaise, which is manufactured to stringent quality standards using our Excella sunflower oil, which I'm also adding to our marinade and basting sauce, because not only would it help with the browning of our ribs while they're in the oven and cooking and grilling them, but you do know that the Excella oil is great for any type of cooking application, whether you're baking, frying, grilling, it literally works in any of those ways. And so now that this is done, ideally what you want, Francois, is you want to give it about an hour to marinate, to allow those flavors to get into your ribs, to allow the flavors.
You're going to brush it on and just leave it.
May I please ask you to flip these over and put them over here for us? Go.
My hands was on there.
And then we go in with as much
There we go.
as much of our basting sauce as we can.
Oh, you baste that sauce. It tastes delicious. I mean, we promised you juicy, we promised you sweet and sticky, and that is exactly what we're delivering with these ribs. And also, Tumi, you mentioned that the succulent nature of them just falling off of the bone.
Yeah.
You've got that.
Should I flip it?
Yes, please. And that's what we want. We want to be nice and juicy. We put this in the oven in a foil package for about 2 hours, covered at low heat, 105 degrees. Then after that 2 hours, about another 30 minutes on a higher temperature to get that grill and that beautiful basting on the outside.
And for someone like Francois who likes to put it on the braai?
Put it on the indirect heat as well, just for the first 2 hours. Then the last 30 minutes, then put it on direct heat while you're basting it.
Beautiful. Like, we're learning something new here on Afternoon Express. And if you would like to try these tips and tricks in your very own kitchen, head over to afternoonexpress.co.za for the full ingredients list. Rock and roll ribs. That's what I'm talking about.